So tonight we're talking about that conversation that or that talk that you may or may not need to have with your son. So every generation passes down something, whether it's intentional or not. Sometimes it's value, sometimes it's habits, sometimes it's silence. And when it comes to our sons or the young men around us, there are conversations that may or may not happen. The question isn't just what is being said, but also who is saying it and what fills this space when nothing is said at all. So, tonight, gentlemen, we're just opening the door to that idea. Now, for tonight's show, we are going to start with some definitions. But even before we get into that, I just want to let everybody know who's watching that all three of us are fathers. So before we get into anything, if y'all are open to it, I would just like to go around the horn and just to let everybody know what your role is as a father, meaning just um how many sons you have. And if you want to, their ages. And if you want to, you can go into something about them. You don't feel free that you don't have to, but at least if y'all okay with it, just sharing, how old your sons are and how many that you have.
I'll jump out there because I know I got the youngest kids. So uh, I got an 11-year old this February, and my 14-year-old, birthday's in August. So he's on the second half of his freshman year in high school. So uh, football stand out this year. He wanted to get into track and field. He got his plate full. Orchestra, drama club, JRTC. Like, he's living the full high school experience. I say it that way. And we just, I'm just playing the role, encouraging him and guiding him and being there what he needs. As he experiences his walk. But this is his journey. And, I'll let him know that.
Yeah, I mine's older, as he said. My oldest is 31, and my baby. So and yeah, that's the range. The oldest and the baby, both of them are boys. The girls are in the middle. So two boys, two girls. The oldest is 31, and the baby is 21. And my role in their life right now is advisor.
You said 31?
31.
Okay. Yeah, I just left my 30s.
Yeah, you know what? Nobody asked you. Nobody asked you.
All right. So with Nat Gaddy, I'll get to mine. So, Coach, in any of those, does either one of your sons have children?
Yes, the
Okay.
oldest one.
All right. So mine are I got three sons. Mine are 20, mine are 24 and 30. And my oldest has two. So with that being said, we got a total of seven boys ranging from the ages 11 to 31, and we got two of those being fathers. So that means me and myself and Coach, not only do we have sons, but we also have not only are we a father, we're also a grandfather too.
I
So
was
I
going to
just kind of
say, I
yeah, so
see
I
the
just kind of huh.
my bad. I see the hashtag say hashtag daddy and hashtag father. Thank y'all. Don't
Yeah.
forget hashtag papa. Uh, and
Man,
my
pop
bad.
pop. POP. That's what I go back for the granddaughters call me. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to kind of share that with the audience and kind of us to kind of let everybody know kind of where we at in our fatherhood journey, because coach me and coach been in this thing for 30 plus years right now. And then, so we got double the amount of time in the seat as a father as you do. So and that comes with different experiences, different challenges, the things that you are experiencing right now, me and coach may or may not had to go through. And some of the things may be a little bit different. So, as we go through this conversation, just want the audience to understand, a little bit our perspective are definitely going to be different. But I'm just interested to see how it turns based off of our level and based on where we are in fatherhood and our experiences and stuff like that. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with a couple of definitions. So the first definition, because the title of the show is called "If You Don't Have This Talk with Your Sons, Someone Else Will." So the first thing we're going to talk about is the word talk. So the first definition is talk, an exchange of thoughts, ideas, or perspectives, formal or informal, that can shape understanding. We can always butcher, we can dilute, we can add to these definitions at any time, but they're just here to kind of set a base for the conversation as we go forward. What say you, gentlemen?
I can live with it, but there's some challenges in it, but that's all right. I
Yep,
can live. I
I
can live
agree.
with it.
Okay. All right. Our next one is called influence. So influence is the ability to affect how someone thinks, feels, or behaves, whether intentional or not. So influence, the ability to affect how someone thinks, feels, or behaves, whether intentional or not. You rocking with it? Got some north and south? Okay. So our next one is perspective. Perspective. Empowering perspective. Empowering perspective. There we go. The way someone interprets and understands the world based on their experiences and environment.
The- yeah.
All right,
So
so go
for
ahead.
this conversation, this is sufficient. I don't think this is the totality of what perspective is.
I agree.
But by that same token, based upon the conversation, I think we can go with it.
Okay. All right. So moving down to the first question of the night, and this is also for the chat. So I want to know what you guys think about this as well. So for the panel and the chat, when you hear the phrase having a talk, what does that mean to you personally? So again, this is for the panel, and we would really like to know what you guys think in the chat as well.
So I'll start off. This kind of goes back to what my original thought was for this definition. Because if I recall correctly, it said the exchange of, that's not always conducive based upon some of the talks that need to be had. Um,
Mm,
it's not necessarily an exchange. Some talks are like one way interpretations of information that you have not yet experienced or what is to come. So it can't be an exchange of ideas in that regard because you have not yet experienced it or even encountered the thing, ideally, if I'm doing my role properly, the thing that is to come. So when I hear having a talk, it is like we used to say in the Army, met TC. It depends upon the situation, right? So it once we understand what the situation is, then that kind of guides us into the talk that we're going to have. Is it a talk to where we're exchanging ideas, me trying to get an understanding of the things that you're dealing with right now, so I have a better perspective of guiding you, or me sharing something with you for you to be concerned with because you have yet to encounter it. So that's kind of like what I'm thinking when you start, look at this phrase having a talk.
Um, the first thing that comes to my mind when I hear the term "have a talk," right? I'm thinking on a broad spectrum. I'm trying not to think in the sense of just me and my children, right, or me and my father. Um, I would always say it starts with the first thing I'm thinking is what is my relationship with my father or child determines how I feel when I hear this term, right? My father, if my father came to me and said, "Hey son, we need to talk," as an adult, I'm not too nervous. I'm more worried about what's gonna come out of his mouth, right? Rest in peace, Pop. But when he was alive, my father, he was a funny guy to me. I always enjoyed talking to him. But you know, if the tone and the temperature changes when I hear the term, have a talk, I'm thinking that I'm about to receive. When you talk about military, I think of just a direct approach to a counselor. You know what I mean? And that's what I think of. So so I'm kind of with you when I hear it in this context. It definitely takes out the exchange portion. It goes to I'm about to receive something. I don't know if I'm going to like it. I don't know if I'm going to want it. I don't know if I'm going to need it, but I know I'm going to get it. This is what this conversation is. So, and I don't even use the word conversation because that is a big difference between talk and conversation. Because conversation, that exchange is definitely there, but the talk doesn't have to have it.
All right, I can rock with that. I agree, to what both of you guys said, and to Coach's point, I think maybe what the definition I had of talk, maybe more along maybe more along the side of a conversation, kind of like what you just mentioned right there. So when I hear the phrase having a talk, I'm with y'all. The context is important. The environment around when someone says having a talk is different. If I know if I'm coming in at 1 o'clock in the morning and someone saying let's have a talk, that's different. I mean that I already know what's going down. When my son called me at 12 o'clock in the middle of the night, I don't know. So I think it definitely depends on the context of it, as to how someone may think or what they may believe or think is going to happen when they hear it having a talk. So, um, moving along to the next question, who or what, um, where's that question at? There you go. Who or what do you think shapes a young man's perspective the most today? So I know we all got sons, and we see sometimes how they moving, and and we also see on social media, depending on what you're looking at, and then the experiences that we have in person with people. So based off of all of those and your experiences and what you see, who or what do you think shapes a young man's perspective the most today?
He got a laundry list, so let me go before he. uh, but hopefully, one of those people are their fathers. If the father is present, right, then I'm going to err on the side of, well, not err on the side, but I'm going to start with father, right. Um, if the child and a part of it is about how the child is raised, right. If the child is studious, if they enjoy their school experience, I would say 9 times out of 10, you have, especially in high school, you have those male influences, right. If they're in sports, you have those teachers if they're more of the academic type, and you know that impacts them. And I wasn't studious, but I just had, even as a troubled kid, I remember those. It was a few teachers who tried to help me out, but it was the male teachers that took attention, that I looked at differently. And so if there's any male teachers out there, don't discount that, because some young men, it feels different when it comes from you. It definitely does. But we will be foolish to discredit friends, right? And so whoever's influencing the friends that they have is influencing your children, right? Not directly, but they're influencing your children. And I have to go along with social media, right? These big social media influencers. That's that's their stars of today, right? Their musicians are stars, but their musicians are not as much as personalities as they were for us back in the day. You know, for me, our rappers, Jay Z's and all of those guys, we paid attention to what was said about them. Because we were following what was going on, or what we saw in their life, whatever they exposed to us. That's what we want to dress like them. I remember Cameron had all of New York wearing pink t-shirts. I never wore the pink t-shirt because I just didn't understand it. Like, I keep it 101. All I could afford was the white t-shirts that were sold in the corner store. But pink, I can never. I don't know. It just wasn't my thing. But he had everybody wearing pink everything, pink Air Forces. We used to call them uptowns. you know. But for today, it's their social media influencers. and I can keep going. I know Coach is the one that did like this, but the list can go on.
Oh no, you good. You good, man. You're right in line with what I'm thinking, and I agree with you on all accounts with everything you said. Um, but the question was who actually influenced them today, based upon. And again, this does not reject anything that Gaddy just said because I agree those entities that he mentioned influence today. In conjunction with that, women influence young men, whether we want to admit it or not, right? Reality TV, of course, social media, all those things influence young men. It kind of shapes their behavior when it comes down to how they dress, how they behave, how they act, what they want to do. You look at whatever rap video, whatever they're wearing, what cars driving, that becomes like a dream for them. In a lot of cases, I'm not saying 100% across the board, right? But all of these things get to the point of kind of influencing them. It's kind of like the ecosystem of a person, right? You look at all of these different entities, which kind of shapes that person's behavior, their character, so to speak. So, but make no mistake about it. If and especially depending upon the age, if they're not laser focused, one of the most primary influencers of young men, believe it or not, is women.
He ain't lying. So I'm rocking with everything that y'all said. I'm gonna pull up this comment from Sun Oracle. Appreciate you for being here. Appreciate your comment. Um, a lot of times, and I'm not saying that either one of you guys went there, but a lot of times when we think influence, we a lot of times think negative. Um, so Sun Oracle said a mother, father, or friends, good or bad, the influences can both positive and negative. And I agree with that, but I also think that this is in addition to everything that you guys said as well. Like the influences come from all different places. You know what I'm saying? And I think my next question was this, and this is almost to this question. Does how much does the amount of influence change based on how much control we have over our children? Meaning, if I'm a father and I don't allow my 11 and my 14-year-old son to have social media because they're not ready, or they have a phone and I'm restricting it. So if I'm doing, or if I'm in incorporating these types of things, does that help me does that help with the amount of influence that my kids receive from an outside world? And does that make me better able to influence them in a certain way from a mother, father, or friend's perspective?
In your mind, it does.
Mm, say more.
I mean, whatever you call yourself trying to prevent them from doing, if
Mm-hmm.
they really want to do it, they're going to do it anyway. We've seen it growing up. You know, you had young girls who couldn't wear whatever. They'll put it in their backpack, take it to school, and go change in the bathroom at school.
Mm-hmm.
You try to restrict your son from dating, whatever the case may be. As soon as they walk out the house, their boyfriend or girlfriend, they just try to keep it at what's outside of the purview of the parent. So I don't think it's about control. I think once we think that we're controlling a thing, it's only the illusion that we're giving ourselves, assuming that control is preventative measures and protection all at the same time. But there's only really one thing that you can actually do to put them in a position to where you don't have to, and I'm going to use this term because I think a lot of times we use it erroneously, to where you don't have to gatekeep at the lowest level. But if you actually do it the right way, and you arm them with the appropriate amount of information, sharing things with them to help them to understand that this information I'm sharing with you is for your good and for your future, then you don't have to control social media. You don't have to control what they look at. You don't have to control their behavior when they get outside of your eyesight, because let's just be completely transparent. You can't do it anyway. That's why I say it's only an illusion that you're being given.
Yeah, these kids at school got burner phones and everything. I work in a high school. I mean, these kids got burner phones. It's kids that got boyfriends and girlfriends, and like their boyfriend's parents are paying for the girlfriend's phone, and the girlfriend's parents don't know. It's like these kids can get access to everything that they want. Like you said, these kids in school they vaping and all of this stuff, and the parents don't know. Skipping school, like you name it, like it's going on. Like these kids are being influenced a lot based off of what's going on in the high schools. You know what I mean? And their friends. You know, I heard someone say mention one time you got to there about 14. And once they get about 14, like you better hope that you had, you know, a lot of stuff in them, kind of like what coach said, to where they'll be able to kind of self-correct and self-monitor as they move forward in life. So we what about you, Gad? You got anything extra?
Yeah, to the question, I wouldn't say control. I would say more of the influence you have on your children.
Mm-hmm.
You got control don't mean you got influence. All right. Uh, and uh and then there can be an argument made that you have an influence, it's just not a positive one by the way you exercise control. Because at a certain age, I think we have to learn how to shift from control to influence when it comes to our children. Because I know when my children were younger, I did control a lot of what they watched, what they saw, because and and, and it wasn't a hey, you don't get this, you don't get this, you don't get this. It created a structure. It was more of, this is our TV time, this is our family TV time. Had things for them to do so that they wasn't just sitting in front of the TV or sitting in front of a tablet. Um, so I think at that point, what I'm molding in them is I'm creating a, a habit. I'm creating a mindset for them. But then it comes an age to where control becomes oppressive to the children, and so now I have to become more of an influencer, right? So I may have a child that don't like to sit up on their tablet all day. And I got it. I for one got a child that wants to be on her tablet all the time, right? But I think that level of what level of influence those outside influencers have on my children is based upon the level of influence I have on them. So I could send them out with these devices or whatever, but because I have a great influence in their life and I've taught them a certain way and I give them certain information, I trust, right? And my trust can be misgiven, but I trust, especially with my oldest son right now at this moment, that he's going to do what he wants to do when he's not in my presence, because he can do that because he's not in my presence, right? But that I do believe that he's in the back of his mind, he is thinking of the things that me and his grandfather have taught him, and it just shows out in his behavior and in his talking. I hear him regurgitating us a lot. So
All right, all right. Well, as as we transition over to the next question, you know, we as fathers, we've all had conversations, and with our sons, and we've had conversations with about this, and we've had conversations about that. But and sometimes those conversations are easy, and sometimes they're not as easy. There are certain conversations we may have, and it may go well, and sometimes we may walk away not knowing if we even got our point across. But with the next question being, um, what kinds of conversations do you think happen naturally, and which ones tend to get avoided? So I'll start with this one. So I believe in one hand that some of the conversations that happen naturally are the ones that we are comfortable having, the ones that are easy to talk about, the ones that we may have already think we figured it out. You know what I mean? It might even be something into sports. You know what I mean? So maybe something simple, in sports, but there's a lot of lessons when it comes to sports. You love football. Gaddy, he has a son. He's coaching him in football, and something happened to the son. The son fall down. He don't want to get up. He said, "Come on, man, get up." Blah blah blah. He take a few minutes, go over there, and have a conversation with him. Yeah, man. Hey, it's always good whenever you get down. It ain't about how many times you fall down. It's about how many times you get up. Those conversations that happen organically, those are sometimes easy to have. When the conversation happens and you don't know what to do, I think sometimes those are the conversations that we may tend to avoid. Maybe your son comes to you with, who knows, he's in a situation or something like that, and he calls you and you never been through this situation, so you don't know how to handle it. And I think sometimes those conversations are hard to have. Or some of the ones that may tend to get avoided too are the ones that we know may cause conflict. Our son, he may be 11 years old and he may come to his father and he say, "Hey, dad, you know what? I want to be a squirrel." And he want to start dressing like a squirrel. You know what I mean? And just saying. So now that may not be you may be one of those parents who are super open to that and want that, but you may not be. So that may be a conversation that you may want to avoid because maybe you don't understand it or for whatever reason. So that's kind of my spin on it right now. But gentlemen, to you, I'm gonna throw the ball back to you or the alley to you guys. What conversations do you think happen naturally, and which ones do you think tend to get avoided?
Um, and I think you kind of lured to this a little bit just in the way you said what you said, but it's the ones that the parent want to have more naturally, easily, or the one that the parents want to avoid. And I say it that way because we think it's the kids who want to avoid, but we're the ones that set the temperature. We have the talks that we want to have, and we avoid the talks that we want to avoid. I think it's easy for us to think our kids don't want to have the talk, but a lot of times it's us. All right, we're the ones who are afraid to mention stuff. But I think it's the natural ones. I don't really know if a lot of them are natural. Like the only one, and and maybe I'm partially thinking about my childhood. The ones that felt natural for my parents were the ones that was go get that switch, or the one that said, "When not make me tell you again," right? Or you can stay your butt in the house. That one felt natural, you know. But and I joke when I say that, but as parents who want to be the influence, the trainers, and the teachers to their children, those ones come more naturally because that's the relationship you created. So I think if you've created that more friendship type of relationship with your children, then is there a conversation that comes hard? Like naturally, y'all talk about things like friends talk about things naturally. I don't know how healthy that is. I'll let you older brothers, not saying that to be funny, but I'll let your older fathers, hash that one out for me. But I know we always think about the birds and the bees as the hard ones to have and all that other good stuff. But to be honest with you, for me, it's the things that my son loves the most. That when I have to pull that back from him, draw that from him, or redirect him from that, those are the hard ones to have, because to see the heartbreak in his eyes because he really wanted to go that direction, or he really wanted to hold on to that thing, and I snatched it. That's the ones that's harder for me to have, and it could be anything, but something that I know he wants to do, or he wants to be like, he wants to, and when he can't, when that's pulled from him, or the idea of what he thought it was is changed because of me, then that's the harder conversations to have.
Can I see the question again? What kinds of conversation do you think happen naturally, and which ones tend to get avoided? I don't think it has anything to do with the conversations. I think it has to do with the relationship. The relationship defines the difficulty in conversation. So we view it as conversation topic. It's not conversation topic. It is the relationship between father and son, mother and daughter, father and daughter, mother and son. If they have a relationship to where difficult conversation are not so difficult, then those conversations are now more natural. Even if their friends tell them that they struggle having difficult conversations with their parents. So I don't think it's a kind of conversation that defines the difficulty. It is the parent and child relationship that defines the difficulty of potential conversations. And when we look at it from that lens, like, I think what we see is, and I think we both have seen it within the differing generations that we've seen in our lifetime. On one hand, you have a very strict generation to it. Now, I ain't finna talk to my mom about that at all. You can cancel Christmas, bro. Just ain't gonna happen. But that's because of the relationship. And then on the other hand, you have this friendship style relationship to where there is no limitations in the conversations that are being had. And that's not good either. There has to be a balance of nature. Again, I say it again, there has to be a balance that recognizes nature. I am the parent, you are the child. We can have any conversation you want to have within reason. That's the key. But you starting to have conversation with me that sounds like something that you have with your friends out in the street, I'm not him. You know what I'm saying? Keep that in the street. When you come and talk to me, let's have a conversation that reflects the type of relationship that we have.
I definitely appreciate both y'all's perspective. Coaches, I'm sitting with that. That's um to the third definition perspective, that's a different perspective than one I've ever thought about before. When I'm looking at this question, I didn't think about the other side of the cup. I didn't think about the other perspective. It kind of made it seem like it's just, kind of like what me and Gaddy said. It kind of seemed like it was that simple. And even though what you said was simple, it's just a different perspective. And I think I've shifted my perspective on it. I think I've shifted my thoughts on how I think about that. So always appreciate moments like this, where I can where the light bulb can come on and my perspective can be adjusted. So yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know where I was going with that, but I don't know, man. I just see it in a different light now, man. Like I see it, but I still see it the other way too. But I'm definitely way more on the other side. I still see it the other way just because that's the way I've been thinking. But I'm definitely have, at least for this moment in space, shifted my opinion and shifted my perspective to a different one. So that's always fun. And then I like it because I get to go and sit with it for a little bit. So let's move down to the scenario, man. So here's the scenario. This is not Gaddy's son, even though he has a 14-year-old son. So here's the scenario, gentlemen. Your 14-year-old son is getting a lot of ideas about life, relationships, and manhood from online content and his peers. He often speaks to you, or just in general conversation, of expensive lifestyles and baddies. Gentlemen, what are your thoughts on your 14-year-old son? He's in school. He's 14 years old. He in high school. This what I'm seeing. This what young men are coming to my office. This is what I see them doing, walking up and down the hall. They talking about living this big lifestyle, and they talking about these baddies. Yes, sir.
I got a question. What's a
Yes,
baddie?
sir. Baddie is our what we would call back in the day a tenderoni.
Mm, I got questions, but I'll stick with the question. But go ahead.
Feel free to roll, dissect, change, or
No, I
adjust.
don't. No,
Like,
I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of that. No, I'm just
okay,
stay right here.
I guess I was trying to use like a 14-year-old term. Like, he coming to you. These are the terms that they using in school. This what they calling the young ladies, the young females, and this is what some of the young ladies are calling themselves. This is how they want to be identified, as baddies. So sons, this is what they talking about. So to you gentlemen, this is what your son, this is what you hear him talking about. And then again, he getting a lot of his ideas about life, relationship, and manhood from online content and your peers. The floor is yours, gentlemen, to dissect this any way you want to with that scenario.
What do I think? You said about my son. I mean, I'm listening to what he's saying, but I'm also checking out where his interests are. All right. So okay, yeah, you talking about expensive lifestyles and baddies. I go to work and I talk with some of the dudes at my job about expensive cars that I know I'm not going to go out and buy. All right, but I talk about them. I'm not finna go do stuff so I can go buy a Rolls Royce or whatever the case may be. But when we see some stuff where you may see a picture, you may see somebody pull up on something like, oh man, whatever outside, and we look at each other's watches. I ain't even got a watch on. We look at each other's watches and we talk, man, that's a nice watch. We talk about things, you know, but it don't mean that's actually what our lifestyle looks like, what our sets look like in today. So I'm actually looking at what my son is doing. Are your priorities shifting because you're looking at this expensive lifestyle stuff, And then I may ask him that question like, hey son, okay, I I hear you, I see you. Now in your mind, what is this? You understand that this is just content, right? And as long as his expectations is there, he understands that this is content. All right, even in football, right? Let's flip it. Even in football, we act like it's not the same thing, but a lot of us have built a pipe dream in our children's mind in their sports endeavor, thinking that there may be a rich lifestyle at the other end of this. There's a big contract at the other end of this. It's very similar. We just become used to push, you know, pushing our children more towards sports. But hey, you understand that this is extracurricular. You may not even get a scholarship, right? Now I'm not, I'm going to keep what do you want? Let's push towards it. I get that, but this is not everybody's lifestyle, and you understand that. Okay, I'm cool with that. Now the baddie thing, man, I try to have a little bit of let the kids experience their youth, but understand how to experience their youth, right? You know, now granted, these girls are calling themselves baddies and all that other good stuff, but you talking about a specific female. I'm not teaching you to be like everybody else. I'm teaching you to be exemplary. So my thing is, what's the little girl's name? And that's how you address her. That's how you talk about her. She's a person. There's 1,000 baddies. I get it. You talking about a group of baddies, you know what I mean? But the girl you talking to, her name ain't baddie. What's her name? Or the girl you have an interest in, what's her name? Why do you want to talk to her and you don't even know her name? You can't address her as the person she is. What's her interest? You're not sure? Then you don't like her. You just think she's cute.
Um, I'm still where I was previously. If this is my child's behavior, my first level of responsibility is to search myself and see my role in this behavior that has came about. I can't move the needle from there first because now I go back to the conversations that I'm having with him, the amount of time we spend together. Did I start teaching him anything about the opposite sex, or did I leave it to the environment to teach it for me? I can't get away from that because really that's what this conversation is about. The conversation you don't have with them, somebody else is going to have it. Did I leave it up to somebody to teach them about what a baddie is? What makes that person a baddie? I don't know. These terms is just highly frustrating to me because at the end of the day, we just make up different terms to mean the exact same thing they meant years ago. But at the end of the day, the people that we were talking about, we didn't even know. Do you even know a baddie for yourself? Or like Gaddy says, that somebody who calling themselves a baddie and you just drink the Kool-Aid, say, okay, cool. You a baddie? Cool. You a baddie. Like it's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling how a lot of times we want to divert responsibility, not recognizing that a lot of times when our children end up in these environments, living this type of lifestyle, adopting terminologies that they see on TV. Now, some terminology I get it. It's just a fast. It's just a fad of the times. I get it, right? Probably everybody on the screen at one particular point in time wore a pair of pants backwards. It is what it is. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Well, that's it, before your time. Be quiet there, young Thundercats. Right?
I
That's
remember
different.
crisscross. I just
Right. That's different. That's not shaping your future, if you will, because it's going to come a point in time where that type of behavior fades away because the sign of the times is a thing. But the question is, did wearing your clothes backwards change your whole entire your entire being? Right. Well, I mean, we look at wearing our clothes backwards back then, they're sagging now, right? Is there a big difference? So it's like all of these things, like we cannot forget where we came from. That's number one. And ideally, where we came from, there should have been something in us that grew from there. So now, do I use where I came from as an excuse to let them do the exact same thing that I did, knowing that the things that I did probably was not ideal? And somebody should have been there, for me to talk to me about the things that I needed to hear in order to not display that type of behavior. Because I think a lot of times that's what you hear. You hear it's almost like a I don't know, it's almost like a regressive state. Well, when you was this age, you did that. I don't care what I did when I was that age. It's not saying that I don't know that already. Those are the conversations I have with my child to let them know when I was your age, these are the things that I did. However, this is what should have happened. And my goal for you right now is to be the voice in your life today that was not there back then. So when you're talking about this lifestyle, you're talking about these particular young ladies based upon whatever new title that exists today. The question is why? Why is that so attractive to you? Like have conversations that allow them to give a response. Don't have conversations with them that make them feel bad about coming to you and telling you about what's going on in their ecosystem. Right. You need to hear those conversations and then have a conversation that kind of gets into their mindset. Why are you adopting that and making that your thing? And again, go back to the responsibility piece. What role did I play? Did I not have enough conversation to arm you with the necessary mental syntax to make the appropriate decision? Don't try to fit in with the crowd. How do they say? You want to be one of the bananas so you can hang out with the bunch. You don't have to be that person, right? You can be your own person. But your own person does not necessarily mean you're better than anybody else. It's just that you understand where those adoptive behavioral patterns will lead you to, because hopefully we sat down and we had a conversation about it prior to.
When I was 14, there was a lot of stuff going on. My parents, I was kind of raised in the church, had some other things going on outside of that that caused some drama. However, Charlotte Jordan in the comments, she did a pretty good job of inputting what was right and what was wrong. I agree with all you guys are talking about. I also want to add that there's an exploratory thing that kind of goes on with young men around this age too, and they start trying to feel themselves, and they start sometimes, even though mama and daddy, even put stuff in me, put some of the right stuff in me, I'm want to go and I want to question certain things. So it's not to take away from anything, but I just want to speak on some of just share that piece about the exploratory nature of 14-year-old boys as they're going through puberty, trying to experience life and stuff like that. Again, to coach's point, yes, we do need to, as fathers, need to with this scenario, look at self, look at what have we been teaching, what have we been modeling for our 14-year-old son for the last 14 years. When and then I believe, and I think coach was talking about this too, if I'm correct, is that now this is an opportunity to start having those conversations about life, about relationships, about manhood, about all of these different things right here. So I think that, when he's talking about these expensive lifestyles. Gaddy was talking about this too. Hey, let's have a conversation about this expensive lifestyle. I keep hearing you talking about you want a Bugatti. I hear you talking about you want to live in a nice house. Okay, well let's talk about if that's what you want to do, let's talk about how to get you there, or let's talk about the reality. Let's have whatever conversation we need to have. Use these talking points, or use these things that our sons are talking about at 14 to have these conversations. I also will say this: when my oldest son was 14, I was about 32 or 33 years old. So the way I think now at 50 wasn't the same way I thought when I was a father of a 14-year-old. Again, I was in my early to mid 30s. So the way I think about it and how I would handle it now is different than I'm sure I would have handled it, back then. So that's just my kind of what I wanted to add to the scenario.
So that last piece,
Yes, sir.
that's exactly what I was talking about, right?
Mhm.
Sure, I have a 52-year-old awareness, but
Mhm.
is it not that if I got these conversations back here, I could have been 32 years old with a 52 plus year old awareness. So
Mhm.
I think a lot of times we take reality, what we know is true, and make it an excuse. Not saying that
Yep.
that's what you were doing, right? But
Mhm.
I've heard that time and time and time again. But the only reason why I believe that is true is because at the end of the day, when we turn back the hands of time, we didn't have that person speaking what you're saying into you
Mhm.
when you were that age. So now when you got to 32 years of age, you didn't have that awareness. You didn't have that awareness to where you were doing all the things we're talking about right now. So that's kind of like the point. And when you start having generations of men having honest conversations that actually feed into the child's growth and development at a young age, now we don't have to go back and say, well, I'm 60 years old. I didn't think that way when I was 20. Sure, that's going to always be the reason. That's going to always be the answer, but that should never be the reason.
Mm. I like that.
Well,
What's that?
you bring up a good point, right? And if we can explore that just a little bit, because we always talk about community and what we should be doing and putting into community and all that stuff, but we never talk about what community is supposed to look like too, right? If we're talking about half the fathers are not in their children's life, some by choice and some by force, right? Uh, but that means a set of grandparents are missing as well, and that's the reality. So I and I found to be true in my life. I can only say that, to where the grandparents wanted to replace the parents, you know, to where the idea was my household had to split so my kids can grow up in their backyard. Like, but you're supposed to be the parent to, you're still the parent's parent. That's who you parent, so that we can parent the children properly. No, I don't have a 52-year-old uh, uh, level of awareness, but if the 52-year-old grandparent was a parent to the parent, I would be able to adapt that 52-year-old level of awareness so that I can be a better. So that excuse don't exist. That excuse only exists because we forget a family don't just stop at mommy and daddy. Well, we're talking 2026. A family don't just stop at mommy. And half the time it's mommy and mommy's mommy. And mommy's mommy still trying to live like she's 25. And they both in there acting childish, trying to raise a kid. And now you got the 5-year-old girl on social media doing the same dances that the 20 and the 50-year-old mommy doing on social media for clickbait.
That's not good.
It's not. But now the question, but this is when we get into these questions and start talking about influences and like Coach says, am I checking myself? Half the time I'm not checking myself because I'm being honest, where did I get the idea as a young man? Where did I get the idea to look in the mirror? I didn't get it from me. I got it from somebody older than me who told me that maybe a part of my problems in life was not life, it was me. It's like, what? My life always sucked. I was always poor. But Joker, how are you still poor and you got a job? You got health insurance. You got life insurance. Why are you broke with a paycheck? Because I had a broke mentality, but nobody told me to look into the mirror until one day a senior non-commissioned officer that had a lot more life in him told me to look in the mirror. But that's where it started. I need that. I'm grown, yes, and I get it. I've been saying I'm grown since I was 18, right? I was stupid at 18, but I've been beating my chest saying I was grown since 18. But I need my elders. I'm 40 and I still need my elders because I still don't have a 52-year level of awareness.
Man, I definitely appreciate y'all's perspectives thus far. We are about an hour into this podcast. So if welcome anybody that I missed in when we started the show. If you're here, definitely appreciate you for being here. If you've been here the whole time, definitely appreciate you looking at the comments. We appreciate everything that's been said in the comments. Go ahead and like it, share it, and do all of those different things like that. So as we move on, gentlemen, for the sake of time, I'm going to give you guys an option over the next two questions. All right. So the first question is this: you can pick whichever question you want to talk about, and then we'll go from there. So the first question is this: which is one talk all fathers should have with their sons, and why? Or are there any conversations that should be off the table when having talks with your son? If so, what and or why? So again, this is one of the questions. The other question is, what is one talk all fathers should have with their sons, and why? Who wants to go first, and which question do you want?
I'll take the first question for 500, Alex.
Ladies and gentlemen, first question for 500 is, Coach, what is one talk all fathers should have with their sons, and why?
The talk of their identity. I think because we don't know that we need to have that conversation, I think a lot of times what you'll find is that, children go through life trying to figure out who they are to a certain point, right? You hear it all the time, like I did the best I could with what I had. And for me, I would say that that's not an accurate statement. You did what you knew, and what you knew was not your best. It's just what you knew, and that's it. And I think when we look at it from that perspective, now we will stop giving ourselves so much credit for what we did. The best conversation that a father can have with his son is the conversation about his identity, because his identity from that point on shapes the outcome of everything that he does. So if we do not have that conversation about your identity, if we do not talk about how important your last name is, and that your last name should not just be given away because you may have a fleeting emotion in this particular moment, you make a 5-minute decision that can have a 20-year implication. Your last name is more valuable than that 5-minute decision. So if I never have a conversation with my child about his identity, the power that his last name carries, the importance of his last name, the lineage of our family, and what the family's future collectively looks like. Therefore, be selective about who you entangle your life with for that particular cause, then I am leaving a gaping hole in that child's life. And at any given point in time, somebody can show up and influence them to make the decision that they want. And that person has zero allegiance to the God that I serve and the last name that I carry.
I love it. Let me get question two. Because he hit that. I mean, he said what he had to say.
Okay, question two.
Are there any conversations that should be off the table when talking with your son? If so, what and or why? I'm going to say, and for the sake of this conversation, I'm talking about, uh, learning in the learning aspect. I don't think there's a conversation that should be off the table, but maybe how we have the conversation, right? Because you're not my son is not my friend. I don't care how old he is, how much I encourage him, and how much he loves to talk to me about football. He loves to talk to me about JRTC. He loves to call me He got stuff going on, and that's great. But I'm still not his friend, right? I'm his father. So how we have these conversations is different, right? But when we talking about girls, we ain't talking about girls by like, yeah, man, how them girls treating you over there in the high school. No, that's not our That's not a conversation between the father and the son, especially a 14-year-old son, right? Um, the con the conversation is, what are your thoughts when it comes to females? And my son gets real uncomfortable when I have that talk with him, but I always check his temperature because when he's ready to actually answer me, because I'm not gonna beat him into talking, but when he's ready to have that conversation with me, that's when I know that he's really taking it serious. But he's still goofy when the word girl come up. You got a girlfriend? You ain't serious, right? But I push to try to see if he's ready to have the conversation because I always want him to be prepared to make the right decision so that I can have that conversation with him. You know what I mean? So that identity conversation, so I can have that girl female conversation about girls. And and here's the thing, I'm not I'm not giving him a negative conversation about female. A lot of times I hear people have the conversation of, girls want this and all girl, what I mean? Yeah, you get free, and no shots at what you said, coach, when we talking about some, hey, you have, you get a girl pregnant, this, and this, and this, like we putting this negative light on him when it comes to, it's like, hey, how about we talk about the fact that you need to treat women the right way. I don't care how bad women are out here on social media and how it looks. I don't care how bad people talk about women. When you address a woman, because if respect is about you, I don't respect people because they're nice or because they're good or because they got money or they don't got. I respect people because I'm a respectable person. That's who I am, and that's who you are. So you respect that woman. You talk to her something, but a part of that respect is respecting her body. All because your hormones are jumping, don't mean that you have to now disrespect her as a person and as a female. Respect that woman. So, but these are the conversations that will happen, I believe. So I check his temperature and all that stuff. So for me, I don't think it's a conversation that should come off the table. I think how we have the conversation.
Okay, Gad, I see what you did. I like it. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take a stab at that question too. I'm gonna do Alex. I want question 2 for $200. That's where I want to roll with. So, question 2: are there any conversations that should be off the table when having talks with your son? If so, what and or why? Absolutely, yes. There are conversations that should not be had, and I'm gonna tell you one of them. That is the details about certain situations. It's okay that me and your mom got divorced, yada, 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 but some of the details surrounding our relationships are off the table. We're not talking about those things. We can have general conversations about maybe some things. Maybe over time, I may bring up a situation or something like that, or a lesson learned from a situation to impart into you, or to give to you, or to share with you. But the the messy details and different stuff like that, that's stuff off the table. You know what I'm saying? So I do think, to your point, Gaddy, it is about how you have the conversation. And I think when it comes to learning and just being a man and just growing up, fatherhood and stuff like that, I think, for the most part, there are no conversations that shouldn't be had. But I think if we're just speaking in general terms, then there are some conversations that we shouldn't have. And honestly, there was something that I struggled with for years until I heard on either this show, either Coach's Corner or Elevated Dialogue or something. I remember Coach talking about that. I heard him say stuff like that. He's like, we're not having no conversations about the details, because I struggled about what am I supposed to do, at some point when my sons, who are 20, 20, 24, and 30, ask me some details about something that maybe their mom may have shared with them, or just maybe something they may be curious about. And I remember Coach sharing. I'll remember the context of it, but the one thing that stuck with me was the fact that Coach talked about not talking about the details about certain things. So for me, that's one of those conversations that are off the table. So if anything you guys want to add to either one of those conversations real quick before we move on, because I'm just looking at the time right now. Coach, good. Y'all good. All right. So the next thing we're going to do something called a versus. So it's about, I think I got about 7 or 8 of them. So these are 2 really good things. Kind of want to see which one is a priority. All right. So just kind of roll with it and just let me know what you think. These are not long segments. These are kind of just to give a quick on it and then jump in and jump out. Pretty much yes or no, kind of something like this. Which one should you choose? So relationship, when it comes to relationships and expectations versus self-discovery, should a young man first learn how to relate to others or understand himself? There is no right or wrong. It's kind of like your way or your thought process.
I'm taking self every time.
You can't do A without B.
Can't do A without B. So understanding self first. Okay, I roll with it. Next. Emotions and expressions versus emotional control. Is it more important to express what you feel or manage what you feel?
I think something's missing.
I guess when I say express what you feel, when I'm looking at expressing is I feel upset, so I punch the wall. Or manage, I feel upset, so I'm managing how I feel in that moment.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. I think something's missing.
Okay.
The thing that's missing is understand how you feel.
Yeah. I like that one.
I like that too. I mean, of course, for the sake of this, the question, I'm gonna say can learn how to control, but definitely the understanding, because that's what's going to allow me to express properly. Because I don't think nothing's wrong with expressing how you feel, but understanding how to express it.
It all depends. If how you feel as a result of your limiting beliefs and your thoughts and your opinions about what I should be doing, then something is absolutely wrong with how you feel.
Touché.
Express that if you want to. Gonna be trouble.
Trouble. All right, next. Decision making versus life experience. Do we learn more from being told how to decide or from experiencing outcomes ourselves?
Both.
Yeah, I was definitely torn when you said it, because this whole experience thing for ourselves thing is overrated. I'm just saying. I feel like I'm at a place in my life to where I have learned a lot from experience, but those experiences, I would give some of those experiences up for some good guidance.
Do know that there's one word that made me say both, and that is how to decide. If that word how was what, it would have been neither. Because our experiences is not the totality of what we should be knowing and what we should be doing. Biggest mistake that people make today.
Okay. Next. Outside influence versus inner voice. What shapes a young man more? What he hears around him or what he believes within himself?
What if what he believes within himself came from around him? Right. I was with you on this one. This time I was with you. Because I'll be honest with you. And I got to speak from young Tuami. I had very low self-esteem growing up because the outside influences made my inner self tell my inner self I was what they said. I heard it enough.
Environmental. Okay. All right. Next. Responsibility versus freedom. Should responsibility come first, or should freedom come first and responsibility follow?
So
you can't wait on me all the time.
Now I'm gonna go first on this one. So So the freedom thing, we know people understanding the freedom. So I'm not even going to rock with that. I'm always going to take responsibility first, um, because that's where true freedom is going to come from. With taking, learn how to take your responsibility serious. Yeah.
That part was my answer. Responsibility begets freedom. If there is no responsibility, then it won't be long before you lose your freedom.
See, I ain't need
Part
you,
right
bro.
there.
Listen.
All right.
I know you don't.
All right, we got three more. All right, what's next? Respect for others versus respect for self. Which one has to be established first for the other to exist?
Self-respect, definitely. For me, in order, yeah.
See, I think we pigeonholed.
We
And
are.
this is just a personal thing with me, right? Respect is respect, right?
Right.
I can point it at myself, I can point it at others, but if I don't understand what it is, like, I mean, what am I talking about? So I think at the end of the day, if I understand respect, not only will I respect myself, but I respect others. In fact, I get to the point to where I respect others a lot of times over myself if I do not understand what respect is. And
Mm-hmm.
if I think too highly of myself, I respect myself over others. But all of
Mm-hmm.
that means that I do not understand respect. So I think it's the respect piece that they have to understand.
Can I counter in this exercise?
Sure. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, do whatever you want to do, however you want to do it.
I, and so I 100% agree that you have respect is the thing, and then with understanding that, I don't. But what I don't believe is that understanding that will beget respectable behavior, right? Because we understand respect, but I think, and I'm speaking of growing up. I grew up in the '90s, right? So growing up, I don't think that in our neighborhoods we respected ourselves, and it showed in our behavior, well, how we presented ourselves and our culture to the world at that time. To me, was not respectable in the grand scheme. You did
Mhm.
have, but in the grand scheme, why? I don't think there was a problem with understanding respect. 'Cause my daddy taught me how you know he taught me, hey, shake that man's hand. Even when I was a little boy, it's like, oh, hey, what's going on, little T? My father used to tell me, look him in his eye, shake his hand. Tell him and say, I'm doing good, sir. You, he made, so I learned how to show respect, right? But but as a people, we learned how not to have respect for ourselves. This is why we have conversations about why we don't support businesses. Why do we expect discounts from Black businesses? Why we expect, because the way we see ourselves shows how we treat everyone else. I hope I'm making sense.
You are making sense, and I would say that that's not a counter. That's more in concert with, because you're
Mhm.
still highlighting the respect for, right?
Right,
Either I have respect for resources over you, and so I use you to get the resources,
right,
right? I have respect for myself, so I use you to make me feel good because I respect me more. So it is the respect for. But when we understand the totality of what respect is, and then that by itself being under a guiding principle, the soul sort, not the soul source, but the source of your belief system, now that drives what you do with that respect. So it's not necessarily for respect, whether you are a respect of person, right? So I'm not a respect of person. I am a respectable person. So I respect all persons, regardless of what your lifestyle look like, regardless of what your educational background, regardless of any of those things. And because I am a respectable person, I have respect for myself as well as you. But if I do the respect for, now I respect whatever is at the end of that for, I respect that over anything else because I'm going to use that anything else for the thing that I have respect for.
Mhm. I like it. I like that one. I like the fact that we stuck there for a little bit. Let's move down to the next one. Purpose versus exploration. Should a young man be guided toward direction early or allowed to explore without pressure?
Yes.
I swear. I swear.
So are you saying that they both need to be going on at the same time, in a
I'm
sense?
I'm saying that he, and just because it's a young man,
Hmm.
he, if he is not guided toward a direction, he is going to struggle in exploration. It's not really exploration. It's like we can view it as an exploration, but keep in mind, exploration generally have a purpose. You're looking for a particular thing, right? So if I'm exploring, y'all, okay, y'all remember Christopher Columbus?
No, yeah.
He was looking for. Okay, I'm good. I'm gonna get off that. So generally, any exploration, right? Any expedition, if you will, they are looking for a thing. So if I'm not pointed in the right direction and drawn back like an arrow and shot in that direction, then what I am looking for becomes all of this, and I don't even know where to begin. So now it takes me longer, and I did the arrow thing for a particular reason because that's what parenthood is supposed to be. Parenthood is supposed to be like you taking your child like an arrow and point them in a direction and firing them in that direction, and now they explore in the direction that you fire them.
Absolutely. But so, for the sake of the two, I, I'm not sure if, at least for me, I'm not sure if purpose and direction is the same. Right. So direction keeps me in alignment.
Mhm.
Right. I can be in, and I love that you use the word schoolmasters, Lisa, because I'm going this direction anyway for this one, right? Because purpose to me is divine, right? Because
Mhm.
you know, so if the goal of the law was to get me to to the point, right? So I'm following, I'm directed. I have a direction, but in that direction, I may find purpose along the way. Purpose never takes me off of that direction. It keeps me in direction. It just allows me to understand what my role is along this journey on the way
Mhm.
there. And so the exploration, I'm very careful because the exploration, I do agree. Yes, you should be looking for something. If you're just get on the boat and you go into the water and say we're gonna find something, you may not like what you find. Right? Just think about it. Even the guy who knew where he was going, but he wanted to go find his way back to this tribe that he discovered. Now, had he landed on that tribe by accident, it would have been even worse than what it was. But the man didn't make it back the last time he went out there. Needless to say, he was lunch. And but that's the story. You just can't jump out there and go find what are you looking for? And whatever you're looking for, there has to be a direction to get there. If not, you're not you're just out there.
Yep.
So as you guys was talking and I was listening, I was also taking a break from listening some, and in between, I was thinking about my response. They say you can't do all of that stuff at the same time, so that's why that was my whole point in that little ramble. But so I came up with an analogy, and I'm thinking about fishing, right? So in this thing, we talking about purpose versus exploration. Should a young man be guided toward direction early? As my son is growing up, should I start directing him to the good fishing holes, giving him, hey man, these are the good fishing spots. These are the best times to fish. These are the best seasons. These are the best lures to use. Should I start guiding him towards, his fishing journey or whatever in life? Or should I allow him to explore? Remember, like Coach said, explore. In his mind, what he's doing is he's saying, you know what? I'm going on YouTube. I'm going to figure out and I'm going to explore. I'm going to talk to my homies. I'm going to figure out on my own. I'm going to figure out where the good fishing spots are. You know, Dad, don't tell me what to do. I got it. So in this, you know, and kind of to what you guys saying, are we saying that it's better to give them the fishing spots and kind of teach them, or are we saying that he has a plan, he has a purpose, and he's going out there and he's finding his own fishing holes?
No. I like what Gaddy mentioned about um, direction and purpose is not the same thing because I agree. If you want to use the fishing analogy, I take my son fishing with me. I actually take him out to the lake. I show him how to bait the hook. I show him how to cast the line. I show him how to pull the fish in the boat. Oh, I'm sorry, me and my son ain't getting in no boat. We're gonna be on shore. I show him how to pull the fish out the water, right? I show him how to take it off the hook. I show him how to put the fish in the bucket. I take him back home. I show him how to, scale the fish and prepare the fish and all that other great stuff. So he is seeing me do it, right? That's me pointing him in the right direction. When I point him in the right direction, now he's had the experience with his dad. He's experienced these things with his dad. This is how my dad showed me how to do this. And then at a later point in time, I say, hey, son, you know what? I got something else I got to do today. Why don't you go out there and catch the fish? And so now he goes out there and catch the fish and he brings it back and I watch how he do it. I can even ask him, what fishing spot you went to? Oh, we went to the same spot we normally go to, Dad. Or I tried a new one. I'm not saying he's wrong, right? But I tried a new one and I decided to try. And maybe he gained great success. Maybe he did not. If he gained great success, cool. If he did not, cool. Then we talk about what he learned on this fishing expedition. Because all of this is all about learning. And the most important thing that I believe he's going to learn is he's going to learn something about himself. And that's the thing that I'm looking for him to share with me when he comes back. I don't make him feel bad for catching less fish than what we caught the last time. I don't make him feel like he's better, make him, because you know how some of us, we still got pride. We got that ego as a parent. I don't want my child to think they're better than me or they can achieve more. No, elevate them. If they did better, yeah, man, that's awesome. I ain't never caught that many fish, bro. Good job. High five. You know what I'm saying? Dap it up, hug them, all that other great stuff. Make them feel good about their accomplishments. That's how you point them in the right direction and let them go. But I wouldn't necessarily say that that's the same thing as go search a YouTube video or whatever the case may be, because now it's not. I didn't point them to the YouTube video. I didn't point them to go listen to a TED talk and see what this person says about it. Those people who do that, they do that in the absence of guidance. And things of that nature. My bad, Gad. I see you trying to jump in, bro. Go ahead.
No, you good. And I'm glad you went back there, because your go back there segued me right to where I was going to go into your anyway, because you said something important in the midst of what you were saying. You're saying the key is the learning is the key thing, right? And then you talked about going and look up YouTube videos. To me, that's not exploration. That's information gathering, right? Information gathering just looks different for them than it did for us. Our daddies had the Encyclopedia Britannica hanging on the wall. That's how we did research. That's how we found stuff, right? or we went out there with pops and we did it with him, and we learned step by step, But you did guide him to go research. You want to know why? Because you said you and your son is not getting on the boat, but one day son gets up and said, "If I'm not going with Dad, I want to try to get on the boat." But the good thing is he went to go research the waters before he just jumped out there with a fool in a boat on some water by himself, right? But he went and gathered information. I don't look at that as exploration. Now, if he just got in the boat and said, I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna find me a spot to fish at. Now, just hope somebody's praying over son while he out there on that water, because anything can happen. Nobody's taught him how to get out on that water. No one's taught him what to do with the water, or what is good water, what to watch for while you're on the water, right. Because these are things that have to be. But if and I'm not saying YouTube is the answer, because if you don't know what to look for, you still may not find the information you need, right?
Yeah.
So that is always key. But if there's a level of research being done, I take that over nothing, over just jumping out there trying to figure it out.
All right.
Yeah, and if I can just last piece because
Go
I
ahead, go
love
ahead.
that. I think people are praying, not Prey.
Mhm.
People are preying off of your ignorance for the most part. And I think for the most part, we believe that I can go to a YouTube video and I can look up a thing on a YouTube video, and then that YouTube video tell me everything I need to know. And then all I got to do is go and do that.
Mhm.
No, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. Unless it is a how to step one, step two, step three, step four. But then there's still something that you're missing in the space of that. So what you'll find is that people go to the spaces like YouTube, so forth and so on, and they think they're getting information. They're not getting information, you're getting data. It is data to you because it has yet to be processed. Once you process, now you make a decision based upon that thing. And now it either becomes information or it becomes useless information because at the end of the day, you're going to make a decision on whether or not you're going to implement this thing. I think we'll do well to recognize that it's an old saying to where incompetent individuals overestimate their abilities because they lack the skill to recognize their own ignorance. And I think just in this world that we live in today, this oversaturation of data, we confuse that with information, thinking that we assigned meaning to it. We didn't assign meaning to it. In fact, a lot of times, whatever stage of life you're in, that stage assigns meaning to it, not you. So now, if I am at a certain point to where this is do or die for me, well, the do or die situation is the thing that assigned meaning, not you. This is your last hurrah. This is the last straw. I'm throwing all my eggs in one basket. Well, that's the thing that assigned meaning. So once you get out of that situation, what's the likelihood of you continuing in that thing? It all depends on how successful you was. It all depends on how it made you feel after you achieve that level of success. And that's where we are. That's why you have a lot of people who do a lot of things, but they don't understand what they were put on this earth to do because they were never guided in the right direction. And that being said, they never did the right level of understanding, learning, and exploring within that direction that they were guided.
I like all of that. I like that we kept adding on to that, adding those extra layers for everybody else. Um, we're gonna get ready to wrap up. We're gonna do this one last scenario. We're gonna hit that scenario real quick, and then we're gonna close out with our final thoughts. So the last scenario is this, ladies and gentlemen. A father believes he's leading by example and doesn't say much directly. His son, who's 16, however, has a lot of questions but doesn't bring them up. The son also views his dad as unapproachable. What are your thoughts to this scenario, gentlemen?
My thoughts is multifaceted, to be honest with you.
It's a lot.
Number one, Dad, you're missing a golden opportunity. A golden opportunity, especially if you believe that your son is leading by example, right? Again, I'm going back to the whole responsibility thing. Why doesn't he say much directly to him, to you? That's for starters. Have you been that person that actually was influential and conversational and relational in the midst of him getting to the point of leading by example? Who was the person responsible for him leading by example? That's the question I really want to know, right? And I get it. Sometimes it's mama. Let's just call a spade a spade. But I'm concerned, Dad, that you're not doing that. You don't view your son, and I'm concerned that you're not even proud of your son, because that's what this screams to me. That you're not proud of your son and who he is at the age of 16. That you're willing to go sit down and have a conversation with him, and even if because let's be honest, some people in their earlier years of parenthood, they don't necessarily know what that is. And maybe they were unapproachable. And then they realize the error of their ways right around teenage years. And maybe they're trying to talk to that child. And unfortunately, that child now views them as unapproachable. Well, show that child now that you're making a transition from the unapproachable ways that you were back here to trying to be more approachable at his age of 16. Go in there and sit down with him and try to interact with him and see what he got going on. Tell him, good job. I'm proud of you. Things of that nature. That young 16-year-old boy needs to hear that from you. Sounds good coming from mama, but he needs to hear it from you. I don't know of any man that's worth their grain of salt that will say that I never wanted to hear my dad say I'm proud of me. Let that sink in. If you're a man, let that sink in for a second. Like that is like an achievement to a young boy for their dad to say, I'm proud of you. So I'm concerned in regards to this right here. It's not too late because he's still 16. Don't look at his age as, well, it's too late. Look at his age like, hey, this is what I now know. This can now be a beginning. And maybe maybe it's hard to get through. That's okay. Don't let that stop you from trying. Keep trying at this point. Maybe he don't open up until he's 18 years old. Maybe he don't open up until he's 20. That's okay. It took you 16 years to realize that, you've been doing some things wrong and now you're trying to do it right. So don't put him on a time schedule to open up to you, right? Make that the thing. Make that the thing that you do moving forward. And hey, listen, if you're still worried about ego, you're still worried about pride and all that other great stuff, I challenge that, because your child is more important than your ego. Your child is more important than your prideful nature. And at the end of the day, if you throw in the towel and give up on them, I'm concerned with that. So that's just kind of like my thoughts. Gaddy, I'll turn it over to you while we wait for Uncle to come back.
Yeah, I was listening because it was so. I don't understand the not saying much directly to your son thing. Like, I remember being a kid, even when my parents separated, nothing brought me more joy than being able to sit down and just talk to my pops. Just listen to my father talk. When I got to that age, and I moved to Staten Island and as a teenager, and my father was still in the Bronx. Anytime I made it to the Bronx and talked to my father, I would purposely just ask him questions so he could talk, so he could teach me something. Then I found out, and I was a singer, and I found out my father used to sing. He told me he sung in clubs when he was younger. Started asking him vocal questions. Hey, what how just because to hear my father teach me was a joy as a young man. And so for me, there's a joy in being able to talk to my son. And how do I know my son loves it? Because he seeks it. He purposely shows me what he's into. When he got into the violin, I don't know nothing about no violin, but he knew I knew about reading music, so he brought me his sheet music. And he was just, Daddy, do you know how to play this right here? I'm having troubles right there. And I played it for him on the piano, and he picked it up like this. And in my head, I was like, that boy knew how to play it. But maybe he did pick it up that quick, right? I don't know. But I struggle with the idea of not saying much to your son directly. Then how do you teach, and how do you influence? How do you guide? How do you mentor? How do you father your son without having direct communication with him, without speaking directly to him, without teaching him, without showing him, without giving him step by step? Like, I want to give my son, my car is paid off. It's been paid off for a couple of years now. And I'm still driving it. I haven't bought nothing new because I want to keep it running so he could drive it when he gets his license. But here's a caveat. I want to be part of teaching him how to drive. I know he's not with me full time, so I know his grandfather is showing him. I know a lot of the stuff that I should be doing is being done. I get it. But I want him to get up under this car with me and change his oil because it needs to be changed. And I'm not going to change it until he come over next weekend. All right. I want him to learn how and what it means to rotate your tires. I want him to know how to change his brakes. I don't want him stranded with no money and can't do the basic things he need to do, or have to call some stranger on the phone. Let me show you how to do what you need to do. Let me show you. And then but that instruction, it allows him to live life when he gets his reward. You get this car, and now you know how to take care of it. I know I said a lot. My bad.
I do have one caveat. I realized that I read the first part of the question wrong, but my answer still remains the same now. The father was leading by example. But I think it's also, we got to look at it from both lenses as well, because there are some kids that are actually doing things that are great, and the fathers are just totally not present, right? And vice versa. So I think if we don't necessarily look at both sides of that coin, and again, this is me making an excuse for reading the question wrong. I think if we don't look at both sides of that coin, I think we miss the magnitude of this question as well. It is good for us to realize that a man, a father, can think he is doing all the right thing, but not necessarily talking to his son. And that's not necessarily leading by example, right? I mean, how can that be leading by example if you literally got a mini you in the house and you're not necessarily talking directly to them? That should be your primary focus as a father. Just saying.
Early in the show, I think it was Coach talked about, the person in the mirror, you know, that person. So this, as I started keep looking at this question, I'm like, I think this was me. If I look back, and I go back to my oldest son who's 30 now, so when he was 16, I was 34. So I thought, 34, I'm still in the army. I'm E7, I think. I believe, yeah, I'm E7. So I've been in leadership for quite a while. And for me, it was more about, and if you've been on this, watched this show for quite some time, one of my biggest things is leading by example, being a model for my sons or for other people to, not necessarily to emulate, but just be a positive model. So this was probably me. My son was 16 and he was going to school. It's like we didn't have a lot of conversations. Sometimes going to school, we didn't have no conversations, and I talked to my dad and he was like, you take advantage of those moments and, have a conversation with your sons while you taking them to school. It might be 3 minutes, but there's a conversation that you can have in those 3 minutes that can help your son, and I probably wasn't approachable, E7 34, I'm in grind mode. I'm in still, hand slicing mode then. You know what I'm saying? And some of that army in me carried over into my marriage and carried over into my to me being a parent as well. So I just say all of that to say is that, this was me. And I think that, now I think it is an opportunity. You're missing out on a lot of opportunities to have conversations and stuff like this. And father really needs to do a look in the mirror and see, how he can build more connections with that son and stuff like that. So, and if the son views his dad as unapproachable, it's going to be really hard for him to come to him. So that means you, as the father, as the elder, you have to go and you have to initiate some of those conversations and some in building that relationship, because you're the oldest one. You should be leading by example anyway, according to what you're saying. So, um, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to roll on with these final thoughts. I apologize for keeping y'all so long, but I hope that the time that we did go over was valuable to you, that it adds some value to your life. So with that being, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to do our final thoughts. Here we go.
First off, uh, thank you, Coach, for the platform, for bringing this great conversation to us. If you do not have this talk with your son, someone else will, and you will not like it. Uh, pretty for me, the bottom line is have the open communication with your son. Speak with him, teach him, instruct him. Right? I think sometimes we like I say all the time, I'm not my son's friend. I'm not my children's friend. But it doesn't mean that I'm a butthole to them either. Right? Instruction don't mean that we have to become their drill sergeant. You can still speak to them in a receptive way, right? Um, but have that conversation with them and be that influence. Start teaching them before they turn 14, 16, 18 years old. Talk to them young. Establish this idea that that daddy is a teacher, that daddy is, and because here's the thing, most young kids anyway, at least both my sons did when they were little, they They didn't think there was a thing in the world that daddy couldn't fix. Messiah used to say to me all the time, Dad, I know you got the answer. And I used to get nervous every time he said it. I'm like, Lord, what is he about to ask me? But that's that's the moment where you get to become teacher. You get to be while you're still Superman to them. You get to instruct them while they want it, while they desire it, while they eyes still light up when they look at daddy. Right? Why? Because the very thing you want to instill in him is right there at your fingertips. He's waiting for you to tell him what's right. He's waiting for you to guide him in the right direction. He's waiting for you to show him how he can be, because in his mind, he's going to grow up to be just like you. And so you're going to show him what that looks like. And then when he does identify what he wants to do in life, he's going to look to you to help him become a subject matter expert in that. It will happen if you take your position. Now I know not all homes that is in it, but mama, teach him, talk to him, right? Let grandpa talk to him. Let uncles talk to him. Let them be valuable in his life. Be valuable in his life. Get him in a place. Bring him on this podcast. Let him listen into the chat. Introduce him to a mentorship program in the city. Whatever, But be mindful of who. Choose wisely. I'm always going to say that, right? Choose wisely who those mentors are going to be. But fathers, if you're there, trust me, they want to hear it. They want it. Start while they're young, and I promise you, the road will be a lot smoother as it goes forward. So like that.
I think you guys, if I've never said it out loud, I think you just discovered the reason why I even started doing YouTube. Simply because of what you just heard that young man said. Um, there's a lot of children out there, boy children specifically, not limited to, that wish their fathers were there, but they're not there. And so for that reason, what if they had a platform that they can go to and hear someone giving them some information that can literally help them wherever they are? Even though they wish it came from their father, they're listening to a group of men, senior men at that point, sharing some heartfelt messages because we really do care about the direction of the community as a whole. I like to describe parenthood as a beautiful train wreck. Um, why is it a beautiful thing? Because you have been charged with one of the most amazing tasks that the father can charge any man with, and that's raising up a child. Why is it a train wreck? Because you have no earthly idea on what you're doing when you first start doing it. It's like you trying to fly an airplane with a whole bunch of holes in it, and you spend a majority of your time patching holes up, trying to keep that airplane afloat the entire time. And you're hoping and praying that you don't crash land, but somehow you just keep flying. And at any given point in time, you can become a really good pilot if you decide to become a good pilot, or you can just keep fumbling your way to your destination, not even knowing whether or not you're even a good pilot. Sometimes imposter syndrome set in. You don't believe that you're a good father, but you're doing the best you can with what you have. And I just don't believe that that's a idealistic reality when it comes down to us as parents. Because at the end of the day, and I'm going to say this saying again because I think it's true, incompetent individuals overestimate their abilities because they lack the skill to recognize their own ignorance. Ignorance is not a bad thing. It just simply means I don't know. So I cannot give myself way too much credit in the midst of something I know deep in my heart I don't know. I may have some idea about a thing, but am I a subject matter expert on it? No. That means that there's only one parent who knows. And if we're not taking instruction from that parent, then ideally I don't know. And then it goes a step further because now I have to take those instructions and implement those instructions into this young boy who looks to me and call me daddy. And that's an honorable thing to be called. father, daddy, just like it's an honorable thing to be called mother, mama. That's for people in the South. I think it is an important thing for us to take that as the most important thing that we were ever asked to do in this life. I say that part again because I think it is key. I think we would do well to recognize that that is the most important thing that you were ever asked to do in this life if you were with child. Your job is to raise that child up in the ways that they should go, that when they get older, they do not depart. That's the key. And I have to figure out what that looks like and do my very best in pointing that child in the right direction, winding the little twist in the back. Y'all know the little toy. Wind the thing up in the back and then let them go. And then trust and hope that I did just enough so that when they fly their own plane, that they do not crash land. And that's my final thought.
Being a father, if you want to do it right, can and be involved, can be a very challenging, fun, all the feelings, all the emotional experience and journey. Coach has been in it for 31 years. I've been in it for 30 years, and son of Timothy has been in it for 14 years. We all got a bunch of different experiences. We've all made mistakes. We've done some things right as well. We've had some conversations. The title of the show talks about, if you don't have this talk with your son, someone else will. Well, what is that talk? I think as you go back and start peeling through this conversation, you will figure out and kind of see what that talk is. And that talk may be different for different father and son relationships, depending on what time of year it is. And what I mean by year is what time and space is it of the child. Is the child 31? Is the child 11? Is the child 14? Is it 24? How old is the child when you're having a conversation? So, to kind of wrap up my final thought, I think that, it's important to spend quality time having those conversations, whatever those conversations you plan on having with your son. One of the most important things is having the conversation. I mentioned earlier that some of those conversations I didn't have. So again, at the end of the day, have those conversations with your sons. They're very, very valuable, because at some point you may not be here or you won't be here, and your son may long to have those conversations with you. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that is my final thought. Ladies and gentlemen, again, I appreciate everybody for being here this afternoon. I appreciate everybody, every comment, everything that was said in the chat, all of those different things like that. I definitely appreciate and are very thankful for every word and syllable that came out of my two co-hosts for tonight. The other two co-hosts for tonight, I definitely appreciate you, gentlemen. This conversation would not have been any better had it been anybody else other than these three people here tonight. So I definitely appreciate you. Definitely appreciate being in this space and this time with you gentlemen tonight, and this chat here Tuesday night. Not Tuesday night, Friday night. Oh man, it has been a long week. So with that being said, gentlemen, do y'all have anything else before we wrap it up, before we end the show?
Tomorrow morning, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're going to talk about talking.
Talk about talking. There we go. Gad, you got anything? All right.
No, sir. No, sir.
All right, folks. Well, 10:30 tomorrow morning. Other than that, Tuesday, Coach's Corner. Friday, another episode here. And you'll probably got something going on Sunday too, right? Sunday, 10:30?
Bible study at 9:30. And then, of course, we have TikTok Live I'm hosting this week. So, yeah.
There you go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will see y'all on the next episode. Have a good evening and weekend. We out.